Delighted to be here. It's always fun to be back in Iowa. Brian Peskin's my name. How many people heard me for the first time on Jeff's show? Good, okay. What was the biggest thing that you found interesting? Why did you come? What was the number one thing? Health. Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Women care about it's a big deal. We're doing a very big thing at MD Anderson Cancer Center, which is also the biggest plastic surgery department in the world. It's the biggest cancer center in the world, but if you think about it, they have tumors they have to remove, and that's a plastic reconstructive surgeon. So we're just about ready to get the final approval from the FDA to do a trial with 200 patients in expediting surgical healing. We're predicting 25 to 50% faster heals. So it's very exciting. This will start at the beginning of the year, hopefully, and the next time I'm here, which will be in April, 6 months, I should be able to have some very, very nice data. It's going to be looking at the surgical part plus a lot of the other factors like, pain and can the patient sleep. But this is all in the plastic surgery department for breast cancer patients. So it's very, very exciting with that. I'm basically a theoretical physiologist. I specialize in cell membranes. There's very few of us that do this. And it turns out the cell membrane is everything. You have 100 trillion cells, and every one of them has, it's called a bilipid membrane. Half of that cell membrane is fat, half of it's protein. There's very little structural carbohydrate in a cell. So, out of the half fat, a quarter to a third are what's called PEOs, and that's what I specialize in. They stand for parent essential oil. There's only two, parent omega-6, parent omega-3. Essential means body can't make it, has to come from food. So if you don't get it from food, you've got 100 trillion cells that are deficient. Remember, a quarter to a third of that fat portion of the membrane will be defective. Why can it be defective? Food processing. If there was no food processing, I wouldn't be here talking about it, and there'd be no problem with anybody. The processing is all on the parent omega-6 side because that's used in food cooking, frying, baking, everything. And the reason it's processed is because you have to have long shelf life. You can't have cereal and bagels and rice and pasta smelling like fish that's gone bad. Nobody buy it. So the food processors have to do this, but as a byproduct, they're killing us. Certainly diseases, and you're exhausted, and I'll tell you why exactly. But that is the whole problem, food processing. And the problem with food processing is it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere, and the biggest processing is in the oils. Not much in the protein, not much in the carbohydrates, in the oils and fats. That's where the processing is. So, what do these oils do? Well, they make what's called prostaglandin 1, PGE1. That's the body's number one natural anti-inflammatory. So if you have a defective, it's on the parent omega-6 side. The omega-6 side is much, much stronger, by the way, than the omega-3 side. Everybody here is fish oil, right? Anybody taking fish oil? If you are, stop doing it, bring it back, get your money back, or throw it in the trash because it is a poison in the dosages that are typically recommended. And I'll talk about why. Very little is needed in the body, but the typical overdose the people taking it are using is 20 to 500 times. It's not percent, that's times. It'd be like taking 2 aspirin and actually taking 40. You'll die. So don't do it. I'm just giving you an illustration. But up to 500 times overdose on a daily basis. So it's horrible. We're not made to be taking fish oil. So PGE1 is the number one anti-inflammatory. So anybody here have arthritis? This helps that. The body is supposed to have natural anti-inflammation to do that. Anybody here have heart problems? PGE1 is a vasodilator, so it makes the artery bigger, so there's more blood flow. It also dissolves existing blood occlusions or thrombosis or clogging. And that was known in 1981. Dr. Weiss in Germany showed that PGE1 dissolves clots naturally. Nobody picks up on this. I never see it in the literature outside of that, of course. It was published in a medical journal. But 1981, and this is how the body makes it from the parent omega-6. The other side on parent omega-6 is PGI2. That's called prostacylin. And this is all physiology and biochemistry. This is all known. Comes from the parent omega-6 side. Prostacylin is also vasodilator, gives you more blood flow, makes it where the platelets can't stick together and they can't stick to the artery. So if the platelets can't stick together, the occlusion, the clogging gets dissolved, and they can't stick to an artery and build up, how would you ever get a heart attack or a stroke? I don't know. And we did an experiment back in 2010 called the Iowa study, and it was investigating oils with respect to arterial health. The people taking the parent essential oils were on average about 7 years biologically younger than the people not taking them. And they were 11 years biologically younger than people that started with fish oil, stopped the fish oil, and went to the parent essential oils. So what that showed was fish oil made you 4 years biologically worse. And the way they looked at this is called photoplasmography, where you can measure the amount of volume of blood. You put your finger in, it's like a pulse oximeter. If you go to the hospital and you get your blood oxygen checked, that's what it is. This measures it and uses some sophisticated programming. So it looks at blood flow with the oxygen, and the way you get it is, how do you get more blood flow? Well, the heart could pump out more, but it's not doing that. It's vasodilating the artery, so the artery's bigger, and the artery is more flexible, like a balloon. So if you have hard arteries, it's like a straw versus a balloon. You want it like a balloon. These oils actually make the artery. Also, the inside of the artery is all parent omega-6. That's called the intima. And a doctor told me, which was absolutely amazing, he goes, Brian, the intima is not just one layer like every textbook says, like every study says. It's actually 10 layers. I've never heard that. And I said, I never heard it. He goes, I know. They all act like it's one. So right away I called Dr. Sim, who's a very eminent interventional cardiologist, and I said, how many layers is the enema? He goes, well, I'll tell you what's published, 1. I said, I know. Have you ever heard it's 10? He goes, no. The minute I heard that he said it was 10, it was like, my goodness, if there's 10 layers, that's 10 times the chance you're going to have a problem in the artery. There's 10 different areas because the intima is all 100% parent omega-6. So now if you have 10 times that amount, you have tenfold the chance of having a problem. And it's Dr. Subodin, who's a pathologist. He looks at the pathology. He looks at the tissue under a microscope, and he sent me his paper. And in the paper, there's 10 layers. There's no question. It's so tough in medicine to get the truth that it's unbelievable. Articles get published with ridiculous conclusions, with titles that don't even mimic the results they got. And in industry-funded studies, they looked at 24 of them. Out of the 24 that industry funded, so like fish oil, you got fish oil companies funding fish oil studies, none of them came back negative. So 100% of the studies funded by the nutritional companies were all positive. My stuff works. Now take it to the bank. That can't be true. Most of the stuff doesn't work at all. And actually, fish oil, I don't know if you heard me on the radio, but Cochrane Institute just came out. They're the world's best reviewer and analyzers of studies. And it said fish oil, they looked at 25 very good studies, absolute failure for heart disease. Absolute failure. Then it came out in the New England Journal of Medicine that it does absolutely nothing for a diabetic person. Now, if you have diabetes, you have 2 to 4 times higher risk of heart disease because that extra sugar just screws up everything. It oxidizes everything and makes a real mess. So you have 2 to 4 times greater chance of having a heart attack. Did nothing for that either. So in spite of the fact that fish oil doesn't work at all, it's still the #1 selling supplement in America, which is incredible. The stuff doesn't work. So back to what does work, which is the parent oils. PGI2 is critical. Also in the brain, you have hundreds of millions of capillaries. Capillaries are where the nutrient transfer takes place. Well, every one of those capillaries is 100% parent omega-6. So if you have an impaired capillary, you're not getting the nutrient transfer, you're not getting the oxygen transfer, you're not getting anything. Could that explain why you have no memory? Absolutely. This whole beta amyloid thing, if all of you heard beta amyloid is the thing with Alzheimer's, they've been talking about that nonsense for 25 years. That is an effect, not a cause. The reason that protein, remember half of the cell membrane is protein, the other half is fat. Well, if the fat doesn't have the structural integrity, the protein leaks out. It's as simple as that. Scraping it off isn't going to do anything. It's not going to put it back in the cell membrane. So that's an effect. The other thing that the parent omega-6 does, it's an oxygen transfer. And this is proven. Dr. Campbell, 1976, looked at this. Cystic fibrosis patients, published in the journal Pediatrics, and nobody did anything with it. So Otto Warburg, the #1 physiologist, biochemist of the 20th century, Nobel Prize winner, MD, PhD, Nobel Prize winner, not for that, but for other things, and absolutely showed lack of cellular oxygen is the #1 cause of cancer. It's the only cause of cancer. Everything goes back to it. So if you have inflammation that uses oxygen, that causes it. But lack of cellular oxygen, it was shown, and then it was proven. It doesn't have to be continuous. It could be intermittent. It was shown in 1953 and 1955 in America. They did brilliant experiments confirming if you deprive the cell of the oxygen, didn't kill it, but just kept depriving it, they all got cancer. And then they looked in the bloodstream. If there was low oxygen, you would get cancer too. And if the oxygen was high, you wouldn't get it. So it was absolutely shown. But nobody knew how to do anything. The whole thing is in the parent omega-6. They are oxygen transporters. So you have the cell membrane, and doctors have said, well, oxygen doesn't care because it just diffuses automatically. And I would tell them, would it automatically diffuse into a piece of plastic? And the answer is, well, no. But that's what an adulterated oil is. That's margarine. So if you ever talk to a food chemist, they will say margarine is essentially a plastic. These oils make it where the cell membrane works the way it should be and everything can go in and out of it. There's no artificial barrier like plastic. So that is just, it's absolutely incredible what these oils do. They're the brick and mortar of every cell, tissue, and organ in your body. And we need 11-to-1 parent omega-6 to a parent omega-3 ratio. So anybody telling you we're getting overdosed with omega-6 needs to go back to physiology school and learn something. We're overdosed with adulterated parent omega-6 because at least half of it is adulterated. Unless somebody's a raw foods vegan, you are going to be getting a lot of oil that is screwed up, and it doesn't take much. I did a calculation. The FDA allows food manufacturers to say there's none if it's less than 0.5 gram per serving. And the 0.5 gram, which they allow to be called zero trans fats, turns out to be enough of the damage, the poison, to overpower every good cell by a factor of 10,000. That'd be like one guy up here trying to fight off 10,000 people. That's a pretty tough job. It's not going to happen. You're going to lose. I don't care what martial art you know. I don't care what kind of gun you have. You're going to run out of ammunition. But it's overpowering at 10,000. So it doesn't take much. And then when this came out in New York, oh, we banned the trans fats, rah, 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 that's wonderful. The first words out of my mouth was, pray what they're going to replace it with. It's going to be worse, and it is worse. It's called an interesterified fat. That's another man-made processed fat. Nobody ever talks about it. It raises the blood glucose level on diabetics, on everybody. So if you're diabetic, it makes you worse. Fish oil also raises blood glucose levels. So how anybody could even say this is good for the heart is insane. It's absolutely insane. Actually, people eating the least oily fish, the lean fish, were better off than the oily fish, because that's what they're always telling you to do, oily fish. You don't need any of it. A few interesting things came out in the newspapers and journals the past few months, and I wanted to go over that. The big one, because this is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, scientists discover a dynamic cellular defense against breast cancer invasion. This was July 2018, Journal of Cell Biology. Doctors don't read this. And it talks about how the cell membrane, myoepithelial, the myo just means there's some protein in there that's muscular. It acts like a muscle so it can stretch more. But epithelial is all parent omega-6. So epithelial tissue is your skin. Your skin is all parent omega-6. There's no omega-3 in there. You eat fish oil, it gets shoved in there. The heat and sun on it are going to turn it rancid, and you got skin cancer. That's why the dermatologists don't have a clue how to stop the epidemic of skin cancer. Because so many people are taking the fish oil, it makes it worse because it goes rancid at room temperature, never mind at 100 degrees in the sun. It's not the UVA or UVB. That's not going to do anything. It's just the heat. Fish oil DHA goes bad at 70 degree Fahrenheit, room temperature. Instantly goes bad. Fish oil, by the way, is antifreeze for a fish. So if you're living in very cold temperature like 30 degrees and I throw you in the water, you're going to freeze like a block of ice. And you can't have that. You're going to die too. So the fish, there's only two things you can do. Have long chain fats like these oils or alcohol. If you have alcohol, you'd have a drunk fish, so you can't do it. Okay? So there's one thing. Now, Dr. Rowan is a very, very good integrative physician, very, very big oxygen expert. Sent me an article, Brian, the warmer water fish, because there's fish that live in 70 degree water, 14 times less the DHA than the cold water fish. 14 times less. Okay, going from 30 to 70. Well, we're at 98.6, so add another 30 to it, we should be taking another 14 times less. What are we doing? Taking more. Average person needs 15 milligrams DHA a day. 15. It's a number you can remember. Just 15 milligrams. The average amount in one fish oil capsule of 1,000 milligrams is at least 600 milligrams of DHA. So that's a factor of 40. That's one capsule. Some people are taking 4. So you're taking 40 to 160 times overdose. And what happens is when that stuff goes in there, your body does have antioxidants to stop it from going bad. But it needs so much to counteract the stuff that we're taking. And remember, fish oil is a man-made food. It's not a natural food. You got to collect the oil of this stuff. It's like juicing a fish. That's not natural. It's a concentrated product we're doing. Nature never intended that. Now all the antioxidants, say for my brain, are going into my bloodstream to try and stop this. Now the brain's left, doesn't have enough there. Alzheimer's again, problems again. So we're doing all this stuff to ourselves. It's very, very bad. So what this article showed, and it's actually on the internet, where they show the cell membrane actually expands. If there's a cancer cell trying to metastasize, that's when it spreads. The cell membrane's actually going out like a rubber band and then a magnet on the end, grabbing the thing, and it pulls it back in. That's what's supposed to happen. So we're very, very immune to cancer, number one, getting it, and number two, spreading it. If there's a cellular deficiency of 35% over an extended period of time, that gives you cancer. You don't feel it, you don't see it, you don't sense it. It's very bad, but you get it. And the whole reason for that oxygen deficiency is a screwed up parent omega-6 from food processors, period. Now, what can give you that oxygen deficiency? Inflammation. Because with inflammation, the body's way to fight everything is oxygen. So it has to take all the oxygen it can get and stop this inflammation over here. What's inflammation? If you have a defective oil, the cell membrane also senses that. So every one of those 100 trillion cells can be on in low-grade inflammation. Inflammation is the cause of a heart attack too. It's the cause of most things. But heart disease and cancer, inflammation is the indirect cause of the problem. So if you take asbestos, you breathe it in the lungs. Lung cancer, right? Mesothelioma or whatever they call it. But everything, that's inflammation. It's little strands inflaming the tissue in the lungs. And that's why you get it. So inflammation is the indirect number one cause. What it ultimately does is destroys the oxygen, and that will give you cancer. There's no reason for anybody to be getting cancer. You either have to poison yourself or in radiation field. Those two things will do it. But outside of that, you shouldn't be getting it. But we are poisoning ourselves with the parent omega-6 being adulterated. This one came out February 2018, fat cells seal a wound. They thought the fat in the cell, in the tissue, just sat there and didn't do anything. Well, this, they had a wound, and the fat is actually moving. Remember I told you the cell membrane to stop the metastasizing cancer cell goes out. Well, it also does the same thing to seal a wound. It's incredible how good the body is if it gets the raw material. Here was an incredible one, July 2018. Massive genome havoc in breast cancer is revealed. Now, this article was in a genetic thing, another article that doctors won't read, but they're saying it's now known there's 20,000 mutations in breast cancer. 20,000. Not the 20 or 100 like they said before, 20,000. When I saw this, it's insane. So if breast cancer has 20,000 mutations, every cancer probably has 20,000 mutations. Well, multiply 20 different kinds of cancer by 20, you got 400,000 mutations. Anybody think anything can be done with these kind of numbers? Even 20,000? Where do you even start? And by the way, the mutation, just so you know, is the effect. It's not the cause. They're so far gone, they've got it backwards. The reason the genetics change is because of the physiology, because you deprived it of oxygen, because you had the adulterated oils. It's like if I took a blowtorch, put it on your arm, and you got scar tissue on your arm, right? Do you think the genetics would change? Sure as heck would. But that was the result of burning your arm with a fire torch. I look at this stuff and go, I just can't believe it. The term I came up with after looking at this is brilliant idiots in medicine. They're brilliant because the technical analysis they do is incredible. But then you read the conclusion and you go, how could the same guy say this that did this brilliant work? It astounds me. But there are brilliant people in medicine, because I'm always asked, how come they make the mistakes? I don't know. You have to ask them. I don't know. But they don't understand physiology. That's why. I do know. There's virtually no physiologists in medicine anymore. I gave a lecture at a big cardiology conference. After I gave it, doctor comes up and goes, I love physiology because physiology is hard science. It tells the truth. You can't fudge it. But I lost you halfway through, and I teach this to doctors. He was an MD himself. And I said, well, in fairness, doc, I've given you 10 years in an hour. There's no way anybody could follow it. All I expected you to do is go, this is interesting. I need to know more. I said, but don't a lot of the doctors get undergraduate degree, or not undergrad? Yeah, undergraduate degrees in physiology. He goes, no, it's too hard. They don't want it. I said, my goodness, we're gone. Because every time we read these articles, it goes nowhere. There's hundreds of articles published every week, and it never leads to another one. I never saw the breast cancer one where the cell goes out and grabs the metastasizing cancer cell. I never saw it referenced anywhere. Nobody even picked it up. One time when it came out, and that was it. The genome thing, I never saw anybody going, 20,000 mutations? What the heck do you do with that? Nothing. It's unbelievable. Cochrane report came out July 2018 that fish oil is worthless. New England Journal of Medicine, which is America's #1 journal, April 2018, fish oils do not prevent heart attack or strokes in people with diabetes. That came out. September 2018, last month, cancer incidence continues to rise. See, all you do is have cancer awareness. Well, why is it rising if what you're telling us to do works? What they tell you to do doesn't work at all because they don't know the physiology and they never talk about these oils. Nobody. New leads on treating dementia and Alzheimer's. This was May 2018. Human molecular genetics. No doctor's going to be reading this. They read JAMA, Journal of the American Medical Association, New England Journal of Medicine, Lancet. They do clinical stuff. This was inflammation is a major cause, not a consequence. So finally they got it right. The inflammation is a cause of the dementia, the Alzheimer's, not an effect. They're absolutely right. Only now it's identified as the cause. Persistent inflammation actually causes cell death. This new work turns previous thinking around. Inflammation is the point through which many triggers converge. Brilliant article. inflammation that escalates and spreads, and that's autoinflammatory disease. I never saw this picked up. It's October now, 6 months later. It's incredible. Here's another one, January 2018 on Alzheimer's. Neuronal loss actually very limited. So the neurons, the nerves, they're not destroyed. They're still there. They're just not working. Why aren't they working? Because of the defective oils. Pure and simple. Never picked up anywhere. It means it's fixable. How many people here are taking calcium? Anybody? This was Bottom Line Personal, which is a regular person journal. The dangerous truth about calcium. Calcium supplements that millions of Americans take for bone health, which it doesn't do, by the way. Could talk about that after. May cause serious damage to the heart. Well, it's the last stage of heart disease. It's called calcification of the plaque. So once again, recommendations by the health field are causing Americans to get a heart attack. Great job. It's, again, no physiology. Here was a great one that just came out. Higher dairy consumption is tied to lower cardiovascular disease. This was last month, September 2018, Lancet. That's the world's premier medical journal. Now, this title just shocked me because milk typically gives you heart disease. It's called xanthine oxidase is in there. If it's homogenized milk, they filter it out, and it gives you an enzyme in there that basically acts like battery acid in the artery. So if any of you want to drink milk, make sure it's full fat, non-homogenized if you can get it. But the minute I read this makes no sense. And what the article goes on to say is the high-fat milk is better than the low-fat milk. That's what it came out with. Not higher general dairy consumption, the higher fat. So they actually got it right, but nothing about how people are making an enormous mistake getting low fat. Not a word of that. It's incredible. So the insight is never given. Anybody hear about the Monsanto thing with cancer and the guy in California? Just came out that the court, because they appealed the verdict, they wanted $800 million, is what the jury gave the guy. And because Monsanto, if you don't know this, with Roundup, they knew how bad it was, and they lied like the dickens for decades. Horrible. That's why you can't trust anybody. It's, people go, I'm cynical, I'm a realist. When billions of dollars are involved, they will all lie. You can't believe what they say. They were saying Roundup is safe as heck, and glyphosate is the active ingredient in the thing. It's horrible. Well, it was just on the appeal, the judge said it's standing, knocked the award down to like $80 million, but they're predicting bear stock crashes after Monsanto cancer verdict upheld by judge. Analyst estimates $800 billion in future liability. $800 billion, they'll be gone. So finally, it was a court in California. So finally, one of these guys is being accountable, because it happens all the time. And what they do is they put money away because they know they're going to get sued. And then typically the FDA and stuff comes to an agreement, how much money did you make, and we'll fine you a third of your profits. So it's very profitable to lie. I mean, if you're an accountant, you sit there, look at you. You make $100 million, you'll get fined $30 million. Why would you not do it? Well, because we're killing people. Okay. Next question. Next reason. They don't seem to really care, which is tragic. Nobody goes to jail. None of the executives go to jail. I mean, they need to start putting people in jail, and this kind of stuff had stopped, but it's just horrible. If you don't take control of this, don't expect government or anybody else to do it. Now, I can't fault the FDA for not knowing this stuff. If they're not given the data, they can't look at it. These companies withhold it from them, so it's not that the FDA doesn't give a darn. There's problems with them too, don't get me wrong, because the way industry goes between FDA and private industry. But if they don't have the data, they don't know. So you can't fault them. You got to fault the company, and people need to be jailed for this kind of stuff. But I think this Monsanto thing is going to really scare the dickens out of the whole field. Here's a big one, because somebody's going to say, but Brian, Ameren just had a big fish oil study. Anybody see that one? Where it cut cardiovascular disease by 25% compared to the placebo group. Anybody see that? Well, it came out. So the group over here took fish oil, 4 grams a day, which is, at least 200, 300, 400 times too much per day than the brain and eyes use, that 15 milligrams. 4,000 milligrams is what they're giving them. So I saw this there's only one possible explanation before I read anything. The placebo is not a placebo. It's a poison. And the placebo was a poison, but just a little less of a poison than the fish oil, which I know is a poison. So I'm reading the thing. Ton of articles didn't say just placebo, which doctors would read. Oh, it's a placebo. It doesn't do anything. Then we find one, because I had 2 other people looking. Mineral oil is what was used as the placebo. Anybody know what mineral oil is? It's a byproduct of crude oil refining. Crude oil refining. I didn't even know they allowed you to consume the garbage. That's what it is. It's termed liquid paraffin. Now, how good do you think liquid candle wax is? Because that's their placebo. And the reason they said it's okay to use that, well, it doesn't react with anything in the blood. They're right. It doesn't form chemical reactions. But guess what? It's going into the damn cell tissue structure. So now you're having a hunk of plastic instead of the proper omega-6 oils. It's unbelievable that the FDA let them do this. But again, they relied on their say, and they didn't look at the right stuff. They're not pathologists. They're not physiologists. They didn't look at, well, can this stuff go anywhere else? Yeah, it goes into the tissue. It's not just sitting in the bloodstream and out it goes. They made a very big mistake, and that's the only reason. Other people started questioning this. So it's going to be very interesting when this comes out in November, because both groups are going to have huge amounts of cardiovascular disease way above normal. So it's going to be interesting to see what comes out, but that just came out. Anybody here taking aspirin all the time? Article came out, New York Times, September, last month, 2018. Healthy older people should avoid aspirin. That's what they said. Your doctor probably hasn't seen that. A field guide to lies, the misinformation age. Oh, this is just incredible. Must think of critical thinking. The more we do, the better you get. Nobody has, this is my big thing today. So few have critical thinking. It's like the brilliant idiots that I'm saying. They have beautiful technical knowledge and then idiotic conclusions based on that. But this thing goes on. Even many doctors don't grasp how often, this is talking about false positives in medical tests. So even if you have a test that looks good, it can give you an enormous number of false positives, meaning you think you have the disease or condition when you don't. So this is a big problem with a lot of medical tests they do. New Alzheimer's drug trial gives researchers optimism. I have no idea why, because it's the same beta amyloid thing. It's just a different way to do it. We haven't found a new treatment for Alzheimer's for more than 13 years. You know how many billions they've wasted on this? Still beta amyloid. They're like a one-trick pony. I'm just here, but the answer's over here, and we stay here. I can't believe how they even get funding. No connection between LDL cholesterol and heart disease. Anybody see? Oh, this was expert review of clinical pharmacology. That's the kind of medical journal I want to see, because pharmacists are quantitative and clinical pharmacology is excellent. So they analyzed the cholesterol stuff. Statins, by the way, are a $14 billion a year industry. $14 billion. Anybody think they work? Because if you do, you're delusional. 1%. And that's just random luck in the statistics. So I've had doctors, so what does that mean if they work 1%? That means they fail 99. So if you have a cell phone to 100 people in the room, 99 of those cell phones would not work. You'd have the one that works, and the doctor would go, brilliant job. Whoever made these is brilliant. But that's 99% failure. But the one works. I've had doctors tell me this. That's why we need everybody taking a statin. I said, but you're missing the point. It's only 1 in 100, maybe, that it works. Don't you understand how much of a failure that is? And they just look at you. because they have nothing better. They don't know about these oils. These oils are a natural statin. And what is LDL cholesterol? It stands for low density lipoprotein. So all this stuff is big molecules of stuff. Okay, there's triglycerides, there's low density, there's ultra low density. Bottom line you need to think about is LDL cholesterol is a transporter of the PEOs. Okay, it's like a magnet. This big thing is cholesterol. How do these oils get transported? Well, you just don't throw it in the bloodstream and it goes, because you need a water kind of thing. So it makes fat water soluble, essentially. So just picture a magnet on here, boom. So if I lower this thing, what happens? Well, if I have bad, adulterated, right, highly processed parent omega-6, I decrease it. But I've also decreased the good stuff. So it's not the way to do it, because you're going to kill yourself by decreasing it at the same time. The answer isn't to do that. The answer is to keep taking the good, fully functional, unadulterated parent omega-6 every day. You also need some of the parent omega-3. Now, the parent omega-3 comes from flax. It's seed-based oils. There's very little in fish. Has some, but the fish oil has none. Fish oil has no parents at all. It's strictly EPA, DHA. EPA has 5 double bonds, DHA has 6. They can go back and forth in the body, so DHA and EPA together are the same thing. They act like it's two different things. It's not. It's the same thing. The body can just make one out of the other. Turns out, typically likes more of one, but if there's different conditions, it can go backwards. It's called retroconversion. All you need to know is they're the same thing. It doesn't matter as far as we're concerned. But there's no parent omega-6 or parent omega-3 in fish oil, so you get none of this, no matter what they say. It's just incredible. So LDL-C, and by the way, there's no cholesterol sensor in the bloodstream. Now, there is a sensor for sugar. It's 1 part in 1,000, by the way, 0.1%. That's how tight it is. 2%, 3% for sodium, calcium. If the body needs a sensor, it's got it. So when I saw there was no LDL-C sensor, it was, well, that's a dependent variable. Whatever everything else is, the low density, cholesterol will be whatever the heck it needs to be. That's why there's no sensor. What does the medical profession say? Oh, it's a genetic defect. And that's why they keep making up the number. 250. Then that's not good enough. 200. 150. One jackass who's a big name in cardiology at the Cleveland Clinic. There's no lower level of LDL-C that we know of. Bring it to 0. You're dead. He actually published this. I saw it in a quote by a top MD in cardiology saying this. Cholesterol is the most ubiquitous substance in your body. Textbook of medical physiology, there's at least 10 major things. There's more cholesterol in your body than anything else. It's needed in every cell. It's critical to virtually everything. And this genius is saying you can bring it to 0. You'll die. And they have cholesterol drugs now that are trying to get it down to numbers that are insane. It's always, if the statin doesn't do it enough, they have some new one. It's another inhibitor, brings it down another 50%. I don't know if you see it. They want like $1,000 a month for this thing. It doesn't work. You can bring it down to whatever the heck you want. Short term it may. Long term you're going to harm the patient a lot. A lot of cholesterol's in the brain. By the way, the people that living the longest and the healthiest have the highest cholesterol numbers. That's why the Journal of Clinical Pharmacology said it doesn't matter. In the war on cancer, truth becomes a casualty. This was Wall Street Journal. Multi-billion-dollar treatment industry appeals to emotion in misleading ads. So you see all these new treatments, they highly mislead you. They don't do what they say. They claim a near perfect success rate when the true efficacy of its product is nowhere close. You can't believe anything when it comes to advertising. It's really, really horrific. So the number one thing everybody needs because of food processing is the oils. And like I said, it's 11 to 1 overall in the body of parent omega-6 to parent omega-3. Most tissues have 4 to 1 at least. If you look at the brain or not the brain, but the heart or the kidney, it'll be 4 to 1. The muscles are 6.5 to 1. The fat storage is about 20 to 1. So if you look at the whole thing and just do some algebra, the body wants 11 to 1 because you want stores. In case you're not eating, you're not going to die of malnutrition or anything for months. So you have storages, but it's 11 to 1 overall. So you need a pile of omega-6. And if you look at where the omega-6 is in most foods, omega-3 is very, very little. It's in lettuce, it's in grass, but even the cow that's eating a ton of grass, if it's grass-fed beef, it's 2 to 1 in favor still the parent omega-6. Even though grass has got tons of the omega-3, even the cow doesn't want it. It gets rid of it. Seventh-day Adventists will go, oh, the people are so healthy because of the omega-3 in the walnuts. It's 20% of the omega-6 content. It's 5 to 1. Parent omega-6 is 5 times more than the parent omega-3. Who gets the credit? The omega-3. It's incredible. Nobody looks and goes, gee, we didn't think omega-6 was healthy. Why the heck is it working here? Oh, it's got to be the omega-3. Well, why don't you look at the omega-6 part? Because we're not. I mean, it's incredible. It's incredible. So the number one bang for the buck for anybody to stay healthy is combination of parent omega-6, parent omega-3. You also want some GLA. Big thing in the omega-3 side with these derivatives by all the doctors. Well, the delta-6 desaturase reaction is slow. Okay, it's an enzyme. It takes the omega-3 and also the omega-6, and it makes stuff with it. It makes it bigger. Well, that's the first thing. You will get an impairment in that if you're alcoholic, if you're diabetic, if you're undergoing cancer treatment, radiation, or chemotherapy. It will impair that. But slow is a time constant, like any engineer or physics or science major knows. If you look at infinite time, it goes to 1 and it's all done. It's e to the minus t over tau. Time goes to infinity, and it's 1. It's e to the minus 0 is 1. So they don't even understand. What they meant to say is it's very small. The problem is, and the reason you hear, I just bring this up because that's what you'll always see, the delta-6 desaturase enzyme is defective. It's meant to be very small. It's less than 0.1% of the parents go to derivatives. So derivatives are this PGE1 that I told you about, the body's number 1 anti-inflammatory, derivative. DHA, EPA are derivatives of the parent omega-3. But very little is needed, extremely little. And they used to think in the old days, almost all of it would be converted because they didn't have the scientific way to look at it. It's called high-resolution chromatography. So they used to think 80% was, then it went down to 35% was, and now in 2010, National Institutes of Health and USDA measured both, and it was less than 0.1%, which is next to nothing. So it's not that it's slow, it's that it's next to nothing to begin with, and these people just won't let up on it. So if you have some GLA, that's more of a direct precursor to PGE1. So it's nice to get an oil like evening primrose oil that will have GLA in it. So if you do have an impacted delta-6 problem, there's diabetes in the family, alcoholism in the family, or you're getting treated for radiation or cancer, different drugs, does impair it. It's no problem. It will still get converted because it's bypassing it. So you want to make sure that it's organic. If you're getting any oils in a regular supermarket, canola oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, olive oil that's not organic, you got a problem. It will be processed. A chunk of it will be adulterated and non-functional. So you have a cell membrane that doesn't work and you got 100 trillion of them. You're in deep trouble. So bang for the buck is anything with an oil in it. Get organic or natural or unprocessed. That's eggs, cheese, milk, cream, butter. That's where you want to spend the money. The meat, it'll have hormones in it, but as long as it's cooked more on the well done sign, they get what's called denatured, so they don't work. And it's typically estrogenic compounds, or what they feed the animals to grow them. And this is why women are overdosed on estrogen. It's not estrogen is problematic like these lunatics will tell you. We're overdosed on it because you're eating it. And guys are becoming effeminated. Our sperm counts are down over 50%. They're going down every year by a couple of percent because we're getting overdosed with estrogenic compounds. So it's very, but again, we're doing it to ourselves. So biggest bang for the buck, anything with a fat The more fat in it, the more you need to go organic. Carbohydrate doesn't matter. It's not much done there. They'll have pesticides on it. So fruits and vegetables, if you got the money, go organic. You don't want Roundup on it. That's known to give cancer. I mean, so the reason you want organic isn't because there's more nutrients in it. Everybody's got that wrong because all they do is publish stuff. So no, there's no more vitamin blah in it. You don't get organic for that. It's lack of negatives. It's lack of harmful stuff. I don't want the damn chemical on there. It's going to kill me. That's what I'm paying for. That's what you're paying for. And the yields aren't that different. You don't need Roundup. That was a big lie. They don't get bigger yields. I've read a lot on this. They've misled the farmers horribly. You can just as easily get great yields with organic methods because they do it. So that's where you want to spend the bang for the buck. So the oils are just critical. For the oxygen transfer too, nothing will give you the oxygen transfer and you'll have energy. I mean, I was up at 3 a.m. today and just, I feel perfect. There's no problem. I didn't need a nap or any of that stuff. You just don't. Anybody here been taking the oils for a while? Most of you have energy, just Energizer Bunny, right? You just go and go. Average person, they're exhausted all the time. They're too exhausted to think. You know, I say they don't have any critical thinking, but it's not their fault. They don't have the oils. They don't have the energy. They don't have the oxygen. So athletes have 25% more endurance. They can work harder and 25% faster recuperation. So if you use weights or anything, or you run or you do anything, you recuperate faster too. It's just phenomenal. So the body is a phenomenal machine. It's us is screwing up the fuel. That's it. Perfect machine. Everybody else is saying the machine's screwed up. I started in the beginning, the machine's not screwed up. God doesn't make mistakes, okay? Let's make it real clear. We do. And don't go blaming our mistakes on anybody else except our own stupidity. If we touch it, we'll screw it up. You can take that to the bank. I don't care what it is. So the oils are something critical. Do you want to say something real quick?
Well, I was just wondering, what is, we're hearing a lot about ketogenic diets, organic ketogenic diets.
I'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
Talk about that. So the oils are the number one thing you need. The second thing you need is minerals. What are minerals? They're coenzymes. They make the vitamins work. So everybody talks about vitamins, which you really don't need much if you eat any kind of food at all. But the minerals aren't in the soil because the way you used to get minerals is organic farming, cow manure, horse manure would be the fertilizer. Now they don't use that. They use artificial fertilizers. So the plant grows, it looks okay, but it doesn't have the nutrients we need. So humans would typically get the minerals from the plant. The plant gets them from the soil. The animal eats the plant, gets incorporated into the animal's tissue. We knock off the animal like a steak. That's how we get minerals. We can't get them out of the plants. Most of them are bound in its cellulose, which is the structure of the plant. We don't have an enzyme to digest it. So if you're vegetarian, it's problematic. You got to know what you're doing. But if the minerals aren't in there, you've got a major problem. And 3 or 4 of those minerals are tied to oxygen production. So even though you have the oils, if you don't have the minerals, you're not going to be at full capacity. It's called in the mitochondria. And by the way, the inner layer of the mitochondria is called cardiolipin. That's all parent omega-6 too. No omega-3. So nobody ever talks about this. This is all physiology, all known, all in the medical textbooks, if anybody care to look, but they never talk about it. They're all talking, mitochondrial problems, and nobody do I ever see, it's all in the cardiolipin because you're getting adulterated oils to the supermarket because they're cheap. They don't work. The thing can't do its job. And you actually have more mitochondria than cells. One cell can have 100 mitochondria, especially to make energy. Now they did a study in the heart. Fish oil knocks out the mitochondrial enzymes. It can knock them out as much as 50%. So if you're taking fish oil, you're going to give yourself a heart attack. That's why I can't wait to see this study that fish oil is so wonderful compared to the crude oil refined. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. So you need the minerals. They're just not in the soil anymore. You don't need any calcium. Nobody needs to worry about calcium. It does not increase your bone structure. Bone density, yes, because it's just slopping on a layer of calcium on top of a bone that's screwed up. These oils make the bone. Inside, it's called the bone matrix. And that's not osteoporosis, by the way, lack of calcium on the outside. They're lying to you. It's something else. They all act like it is, but it's not. You don't need the calcium. That also gives you the heart attack. So you take the calcium, it gets slopped on the bone, the excess goes into the artery, and now you got plaque. It's this hard thing. So it's horrible. The last thing most people need, I would say virtually everybody, unless you're raw foods vegan, is a detoxifier. Because we're eating junk, right? The residues of the estrogenic pesticides and hormones. Well, the best thing I found is called Essiac. It's an old anti-cancer thing. I mean, it's been around for 100 years. It's non-stimulating, non-irritating herbs, burdock root, sheep sorrel. I analyzed them all pharmacologically. And in the dosages that's used, there's nothing problematic. Because if anybody says herbs to me, I get very scared right off the bat because most people don't know what the heck they're doing with them. But the ones that are used here, and I added cascalot to it, which is a South American herb. It's the best upper respiratory maximizer ever. So if you know anybody with asthma, pulmonary problems, it is phenomenal. There's two forms you can get. You can get the herbs by themselves, or you can get a tea made out of it. It's brewed for like 12 hours, so it's technically called a decoction. You boil it and then you steep it. But it is absolutely phenomenal, especially with anti-asthma. I live in Houston. There's grasses, pollen. It's horrible because it gets very hot, then it gets cold. All this junk falls down from the trees. Everybody gets sick as heck. I'll be very minor, and I'm very susceptible to grasses. I used to be sick as the dickens, probably 10 times a year there. Now, I get a minor irritation from it, but next to nothing. So those are three things. 2 parts, what's not in the food anymore. 1 part, minimize the garbage in the food. And for 99.9% of everybody, those 3 things are enough. Any specific isolated conditions, there's other things that can be done, but I specialize in the biggest bang for the buck for the most people, and that is this. So it's very good. You mentioned the ketogenic diet. Carbohydrates, just because I'm asked, what are we ending at, about 7? I just want to look at the time for maybe a little after. Carbohydrates are not essential at all. Anybody think they are? They're not. There's no RDA for carbs. Never was. So this was known. Next question you ask is, how much carbohydrates in the blood? Well, it's called glucose, okay? It's carbohydrate. 0.7 of a teaspoon. When I first calculated it, this couldn't be that because they don't give you in these numbers. It's millimoles per deciliter. So I'm an engineer, and it's like I like practical stuff. What the heck does this mean? I don't typically live in these terms. After 10 minutes going, this looks like 0.7 of a teaspoon. How can there be 0.7 of a teaspoon of sugar in 5 quarts of blood? So I gave it to some other people, and they go, you're right, it's 0.7. And it was, my goodness. Do you know what the average nutritionist is telling the average American to eat? 100 teaspoons of sugar a day. You have 0.7, less than 1 stinking teaspoon of sugar, and you're being told to eat 100. Well, the next question is, where the hell did a 99 go? Well, it goes to fat. Called insulin response. Insulin is a fat storage hormone. Textbook of medical physiology. So I'm in a discussion. The only way you get rid of that after you get the fat is you exercise your ass off, okay? So this is where the whole, you have to live in the gym or spend 2 hours a day running to be, quote, healthy and to be thin came from. They gave you the method of turning you into a walking beast and then exercise for your second job to fix the problem they created. And of course, it doesn't work. You can't burn the fat that fast. Textbook of medical physiology has some nice numbers in there, and when you figure it out, 2 hours a day of running won't counteract it. Because you don't burn fat right off the bat. You burn what's called glycogen, which is stored carbohydrates. It's not worth getting into, but you can't exercise it off enough. This is why exercise fails for 99% of people for weight loss. And I even go to the gym, and we belong to one, and I'd go to the trainers there. Got a question for you. Any of these good-looking women start out real fat and sit on this treadmill and get good? The guy starts laughing. No. They come in good. This doesn't work. No, they were laughing. Running on a treadmill doesn't work. If you want to do anything for exercise, it's weights. That's the bang for the buck. But the treadmill is ridiculous. They're just doing it because they feel obligated, because it's a high-end place. Most of them don't work. Their husband's making a lot of money, so they feel like they have to justify, and they spend a couple hours there. I used to go there years ago. I don't now. But actually, I don't do anything now because I can't tell people exercising like heck plus taking this stuff makes you real good. It has to be taking this stuff makes you real good. I don't care about anything else. Now, you can't live on carbs. You will get fat. I can't mitigate that. I can make the insulin work better, but if you overdose on carbs, okay, so we're told to eat 100 teaspoons of sugar. So here's two numbers you want to remember. 20 calories is a teaspoon of sugar. On carbohydrates, look at that label. Every 20 calories is a teaspoon of sugar. Every 5 grams is a teaspoon of sugar. Burn that into your mind and start looking at this stuff. You don't need a lot of carbs. They're in everything. You don't need to be no carbs. My first comment is you couldn't do it if I gave you $1 million. It's impossible. They're in everything, and you don't need to do it. We do have a sweet tooth, and that's for fruit, so it works well. I've got a very good book out here. It's called The 24-Hour Diet. It's written for diabetics. It was written because doctors asked me, write a book that's science-based so I can tell my patients what to eat. And it's very well done. It is hardcore science. I give you what the medical textbooks say. If it's complicated, I translate it. But we do have a sweet tooth, and fruit does not work the same way as cakes and ice cream and bagels and rice and all that stuff. They're all the same, by the way. Brown organic rice is just as rotten as a Coke. Don't think it's not. It is. You've been conned. Oatmeal is just as bad. It's horrible. A bagel is 8 teaspoons of sugar. I used to live on those things in the bodybuilding diet 30 years ago. Could never figure out why am I not losing any weight doing this. Because every time I worked out, I'd get 2 damn bagels. I was told to do this. Insane. When I saw this, it was, my goodness, you idiots for doing this. And this is what the medical profession and the health profession is doing to all of you, telling you the wrong stuff because there's no science. So the ketogenic diet is absolutely good. There's nothing new there. The one thing they don't have is these oils. So you can have MCT oil, that's coconut oil for energy. I don't find any difference taking it whatsoever as long as I get the parent oils. You don't need to do any of that, but it's just minimize the carbs and you're in great shape. I tell people just cut them in half. So if you used a piece of pie, half a piece. A bagel, half. It's just half everything. You don't have to go to 0. And what happens, the other thing with carbs is every ounce of carbs, 3 ounces of water. You ever wolf down a couple pieces of pizza or the whole darn thing like I used to do? You need a quart of water. You're a human sponge. And then the people that are protein diets, the anti-Atkins diets, go, oh, you're just losing water weight. Yeah, for 3 days you do, the first 3 days. And by the way, what are you telling me? It's good to be a human sponge? You want to have that water weight running around? Are you nuts? You shouldn't have marks all over your arm from wearing socks or stockings or anything because you have all this retained water. That's it. There shouldn't be any of those damn marks. We're just misled. So 24-hour diet is superb if you have a weight thing. And it talks about everything, but from a vantage point of weight loss. If you care about health, more so, PEO solution is state-of-the-art for that. It's current as of 2017, and it's really good too. They're both easy to read. I translate the technical stuff. You can look at them out there after, and it's very good. But we've been really, really conned back to the carbohydrate thing. It's horrible. And high sugar levels are what's called autooxidizers. Diabetes is called an aging disease. It artificially ages you. It's called glycosylation. It's just sugar surrounding everything and ruining it. So you get neuropathy, you get neuropathy, your feet tingling. You always see these ads. That's lack of oxygen, by the way. Oxygen preparation gives you or deprivation gives you pain. So it's real easy. Protein, you don't need a heck of a lot of. I used to eat a lot of steaks until I came across a few bodybuilders that were really hardcore vegetarians and they had fine muscle. You even have gorillas and stuff that have huge muscle, and I tried like heck. I spent a whole day in the medical library and spent $100 on The Great Apes, a book of 1890. There's got to be a way where they're turning fruit into muscle that humans can't do. There isn't. They have a longer digestive system, so they can eat leaves and things, but they also do eat bugs and nuts and other things. They're not just eating fruit. So we get misled with that, but you don't need a heck of a lot of protein. I was shocked. So you need much less of it than I originally thought. So there is something to the vegetarians, but most of them are woofing the processed carbs. And if you're a raw food, you can't cook anything. So that means you're not eating bread, you're not eating bagel, you're not eating oatmeal. So those guys are eating a pile of vegetables. It's called glycemic carbs, meaning your blood sugars rise. So a carb like a cucumber is a carb, but it's virtually 90% water. So it's a natural water diet. So it's really cool. I talk about this in both books. So anybody has a weight thing, there's ways to deal with this very easily based on the science. But good question on ketogenic diet. Might take maybe 20 minutes of questions because I'm happy to.
I couldn't come last time you were here. I tried to hear you every time.
Thanks.
There was a huge storm that went through.
I know, last time storm, I know. I know.
We talked once about opioids, and I wanted to tell you the person in my life who
Yeah.
was struggling with the opioids was given a drug called Suboxone or something
Okay.
that would curb his desire for them.
Supposedly. Did it work?
Supposedly, it worked, although it's also a drug that you could get hooked on.
Ah, it's like methadone.
He stopped it.
Okay.
He stopped it after a month.
Yeah.
I give him Essiac.
Okay,
I give
okay.
him the oil.
Okay.
I give him a product called Neuro from the Paseo company.
Okay.
Lots CBD oil. I give him that.
Okay.
He's doing very well.
So is the addiction pretty much
I would say it's fine.
excellent?
Yes.
So things are doable.
Right.
Pain is a big problem. Again, if you have maximum PGE1, the anti-inflammatory, this goes a long way.
What's your thought on the genetically engineered grains and stuff we get? Because
Yeah, good question. Genetically engineered stuff. I'm not big on it because it's an experiment. If you want to be doing this, again, the experience is we touch it, we ruin it. And if you think you're going to get an answer, what they do in this GMO stuff is 90 days, 120 days, and there's no problem. Typically, there's huge problems after that, and they bury the data. I mean, there's all kinds of rodent studies where they've developed huge tumors eating this stuff. I wouldn't touch it myself. If you want to be an experiment, do it. That's my comment. But
it's in most everything. All these foods.
that's why you go organic.
Yeah.
You need to spend the darn money unless you want to be a guinea pig. I don't. Good question.
I give the oils to my cat.
Excellent.
And
Its coat should be superb, right?
oh, beautiful.
Lots of animals, yeah.
He's been developing urinary tract infection.
Really? It's not from that. Maybe give some of that liquid Essiac. I would give some liquid if you can put it in. Take a dropper and just drop it in her mouth. Probably won't eat it in water. It's kind of acidic. I would just use a dropper and squirt it in. Just get it down there.
Just like maybe once or twice a day.
Once a day. It should help.
For the rest of her life. Or
Well, see if it goes away. Hopefully it'll go away in a couple of days. Can you change the food? I don't know what's doing it.
well, I cook up chicken hindquarters for her. And
That's
pretty simple.
good. Is the litter box okay? Maybe change the litter if it's getting there. It could be a problem.
It's clumpy, and I scoop it out.
What kind of cat? Long hair, short hair?
Short hair.
Shouldn't be an issue. Huh? It's not the litter thing.
I'll try the
Yeah, try. Get it down her. Get it down her. It's phenomenal for urinary tract infections in humans. It's phenomenal.
The Essiac oil, is that in your plants, or what is that? a separate thing?
Yeah. Essiac is the liquid herbal. It's a liquid herbal.
So that's
You just see what it is. It has burdock root, sheep's. I can't legally tell specific products for things because I talk disease prevention. But if you just check whatever products there are, make sure it's got burdock root, sheep's sorrel, slippery elm bark, Turkish rhubarb root, and cat's claw. That's Essiac. As long as it's got that, you got a winning formulation.
Would you spell the name of that?
ESSIAC. You can pull it up on the internet and see all about it. Got a long history. It's the best blood purifier optimizer there is. Superb. Celiac disease? It's a carbohydrate thing, isn't it? Ce- Carbohydrates. Yeah, you shouldn't be eating it anyway. You know, celiac is the question. You're not supposed to be eating a pile of carbohydrates. Now, the other thing with the whole digestive system, the lining is parent omega-6, epithelial tissue. So, I mean, we've never done a study with this, but if you take these oils, that should go way down because it's a tight junction problem and it's the cell membrane. It's just a mess. So these oils will fix. I've never heard anybody talk about it. All they talk about is, you know, probiotics and everything else, but they never talk what's the physiology lining the whole gut. It's parent omega-6, epithelial tissue. Good question. But you don't want to be eating a lot of carbs anyway. So I can make the case it's not that bad. It's like lactose intolerance. You shouldn't be drinking milk anyway. You're not. We don't need it. Now cream, that's not lactose intolerance. There's no lactose in cream.
A question for you.
Yeah.
I've been following you for many years.
Yes.
And years ago, you used to discuss the majority, everything was about omega-3.
Yep.
Tonight, I'm hearing much more about omega-6.
Yeah, it's a good question.
What did it change?
Yeah, what's the big thing with omega-6? Well, years ago, it used to be more of an issue of a deficiency of the omega-3. But today, because of food processing being the number one thing and how adulterated oils are everywhere, so nothing goes bad and they can save a lot of money because they can reuse the oil again and again and again. That's what they want. They don't want to get new oil or do anything. They just want to keep using it. The main problem is adulterated parent omega-6. So it's changed. So there's a woman called Budwig, and she was real good in her day. It was the Budwig diet, which was flax oil, cottage cheese, which you never needed, but it was the bringing the parent omega-3 because remember it's 11 to 1, but there's still some of the parent omega-3 in there. The whole thing today is adulterated parent omega-6. So nobody's overdosed on it. They're overdosed on the adulterated portion. Very good question, but things have changed. Budwig is very out of date. Brilliant in her time, but not today. Blood pressure, the oils will help blood pressure because it makes the artery dilate. So remember, it's like a balloon. You've been taking the oils and you still have high blood pressure? What drugs you on? A pile of them?
Well, no, in fact,
What?
I even had tried to be off of it.
There's something you're doing to counteract what these oils physiologically do. You're saying the blood pressure didn't go down at all?
Well, I don't know for sure if it did, but it gradually was going up, and I think lisinopril, that's what it was. Lisinopril is what I take for blood pressure. But I decided I needed to get back on it because my number was pretty high.
Well, when you take blood pressure, first thing is it's got to be when you don't move around for 10 minutes. Most time you go in a doctor's office, you're moving around. It's going to be artificially higher. So the best way to do it is in bed. Buy your own machine. They're only 40 or 50 bucks. Do it in bed when you get up and you're lying there. Not when you get up and sit up. Your blood pressure is going to go up. It's like your blood sugar goes up. It has to. So when you're lying in bed at 6 in the morning or whenever you get up, measure it and see. That's your real blood pressure. Because it can vary by 40 points during the day, depending on what you're doing. I put a gun to your head, it's going to go up a lot more than that. So it's supposed to. But you got to be very careful with blood pressure. But these oils have to reduce it. I've had too many people with lowering the dickens out of it because it makes the artery flexible. It's physiology, it has to. And it minimizes the clog. So there's two things right there, and it makes it where the blood platelets can't stick. So that's three things. So how it cannot work, if it's not, you're doing something to counteract it, which is typically another drug you're taking that can negate things. Because drugs have what's called side effects, in case you didn't know, and are typically horrendous.
So I went most of the summer.
Get the blood pressure machine, and then let me know, let me know. But there's very good ones, and they're automatic. You just put it on, hit the button, and you want it accurate. You make sure it's accurate to within like 3 points. Should be 50 bucks. Go to Walgreens or any of those places, and they'll have them.
Just real quick, you're talking about cancer. You went really fast and you mentioned skin cancer and that. The omegas are still good for that. What about the D3 and things like that?
Yeah, for skin cancer, your skin is all parent omega-6. There's no omega-3 in there. Now, if you take an overdose of it, if you're taking a pile of flax oil, if you're taking a pile of fish oil, it will get pushed in there because your body can't get rid of it anywhere else. So what happens is the wrong stuff, the parent omega-3, or the DHA EPA, because you've taken a super physiologic overdose, displaces the omega-6. And there's been studies about this, and I've published them. It's in the books. It displaces it, and it ruins it, and it makes it where it doesn't work. So that's the problem in the skin. If you're taking, say, fish oil or a lot of flax oil, it gets in there, the sunlight hits it. Remember I told you, DHA fish oil spontaneously turns rancid at this temperature right here. So never mind what it does in your body at 98.6. Also, if you're getting adulterated oils, meaning canola oil, any of the garbage you get at the supermarket, unless it's organic, you're going to get those age spots. It's called lipofuscin. If you have any brown age spots, that's adulterated, oxidized fat. And if it's on your skin, it's in your organs, the same thing. You shouldn't have that. A little bit, maybe, but you should have very, very little of that. That's a sign you got oxidated oil.
So are you saying that
Flax oil by itself, you don't want that either. You don't want to be grinding flaxseed. That's the old days. You're going to get an overdose of that stuff. Plus, you don't want the seed. You don't want the hull. That's called the lignin part. I mean, you don't want that. It's dangerous. It's very estronogenic. It's horrible. Stop doing it.
Back to the celiac, they can't have gluten, but yet they can have rice. Now, isn't that carbohydrate too?
Yeah, it is carbohydrate. Mm-hmm. I don't know. You know, I don't study it that much, but it's really not what I do that much. You know, I say you want minimum carbs anyway, so you want that. Put these oils in and see what happens. You know, it'll be a good experiment. Put the oils in and see. You know,
So omega-6 doesn't produce the heat when you said the 3 can generate heat.
the omega-6 doesn't go bad with heat, no, because it has 2 double bonds. DHA, EPA have 5 and 6. So it's no problem. Up 120, 130 degrees, it's no issue. It's not going to go bad. So you can even cook with it. Grapeseed oil, right? Grapeseed oil is all the omega-6. Avocado oil, it's got omega-9, but it's omega-6. So the omega-6 oils you can cook with. The omega-3 oils, never. And there's no oils that have omega-3 they cook with. So good question. The omega-6 part, nothing to worry about. Question over here?
Yeah, what supplements do you use for lung cancer?
Lung cancer, I would use the oils, triple the amount. The parent essential oils, of course, and the liquid herbal, phenomenal. With the cat's claw. You know, the Essiac with cat's claw is what you want. Phenomenal, the two together. Now, anything with cancer, cancer lives on carbohydrate. Everybody know that? Lives on sugar? It's like a yeast. It's dumb. So when they see these ads, we're outsmarting cancer. Cancer is an idiot. It is brainless. Yeast multiplies all over the place. That's a cancer. Cancer is a temporary mechanism so you don't die. If you're oxygen deprived, the cell tissue can either die or it can work on fermentation, which means with no oxygen, if it has to and it has the capability. So it's meant to be a temporary way to solve the problem. I'm going to have you buy some time because before you actually get cancer, it's years. It's at least 5 years of oxygen deficiency. You did not get cancer in a day. Anybody that says you got it and blah, 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 they don't know what the heck they're talking about. It can even take a decade. So you got time to do something, but don't eat a high-carb diet. Horrible.
What's the maximum dose you could take without hurting you?
The oils, parent essential oils? The only problem you can have is too much of the omega-3 component. So you could tell typically double the amount you can do all day long. For short term, you can do triple. Like if you have cancer or heart disease, you can triple dose it. And you don't need much. 3 grams per 160-pound person is plenty of these oils. That's plenty.
How many oils pills a day? 8? How good you go up?
Well, it depends what the capsule size is. You know, if you do 3,000 grams liquid. You could just just take a look. 3,000 grams is good for, or not grams, milligrams, is good for a 160-pound person. And you could just go by there. But if you see any bleeding, like in your gums, if you smack something and you get that bruise called a hematoma, you shouldn't get that, or it should heal very fast. That's too much omega-3. See, the omega-3, if you get an overdose, makes it where you have heart problems or cardiovascular problems, or I smack you and you get that black and blue and it doesn't go away. It should go away pretty fast, but you could take double the amount all day long. Good question.
You warn against calcium. What would you suggest to speed the healing of a compression fracture of lumbar vertebrae?
Well, calcium won't do it. The oils make the bone, and they're phenomenal for the anti-inflammatory, the first derivative, PGE1. So definitely the oils, and definitely make sure you're eating enough protein because that's the bone matrix. Physiologically, that's the best you can do for nutrition. Calcium is not going to help that. That's different. Calcium I won't touch. You get enough calcium from regular food. Magnesium is a different story. That's the minerals. Chelated is superb. That's what you want. Chelated means it's tied to an amino acid. That's the way you'd find it in a hunk of meat. And that's the way humans get their minerals. So you don't want just regular stuff because it goes in and it can precipitate. Like I take salt, dump it in water. If I don't mix it, it goes right to the bottom, right? Well, that's what's happening with most calcium. It's just precipitating out. That's the problem with it. And that happens in your arteries. But it's in the food anyway, you don't need it. But if you want to get it, cottage cheese has it. I mean, lots of foods have extra calcium, but if you had problems in calcium, you would have tetany, which means you're getting spasms in the fingers. I don't know anybody that's ever had that. It's in a textbook of medical physiology. Calcium lack, tetany. Nobody's ever had it. Nobody has a calcium deficiency. They're crazy. This all was invented by the milk industry, of course. Just like 8 glasses, 8 ounces a day of water. Anybody hear that one? Who do you think came up with that? The water industry, because you don't need it at all. It's the stupidest thing in the world. It's actually very harmful. There's a pile of water in food. Cats need no water. Anybody know that? They typically get 90% of their water out of the food. They drink very little water. So lettuce is 90% water, cucumber is 80% water. Huge. Even a steak that's cooked, 56% water. Even the steak, 50% water. It's in there. So it's another con job. All we do is get conned.
I got too many questions. Okay, what about iodine?
And for thyroid? Iodine for thyroid?
Yeah, I just heard that one of the
Iderol or something?
yeah, big deficiency is sodium in the body. Unless you get it through salt, and now people taking the marine salt, actually you don't get the iodine, which is a deficient mineral in the body, which also help with thyroid.
It could be. I don't know. I haven't looked at it a lot. You know, the iodine and thyroid problem. Thyroid problem is an epidemic. It very could be. You don't want to be taking iodized salt because the salt they use is horrible. So you want a salt from the sea. Does sea salts have iodine in it or not?
No, it doesn't.
They don't.
No.
Then I don't know. I got a problem with it then. I mean, because the salt from the sea is just fine. And if it doesn't have iodine, why do you need it? I mean, I don't know where the deficiency is coming from. Where was it 50 years ago or 100 years ago is where I'd have to see what are we doing differently now than we were doing 100 or 50 years ago with the iodine deficiency. Yeah, where's it coming from?
Supposedly it's getting extracted to be used for something else that they get more money.
But what food is it supposed to be in that it's not in now?
Well, now it's being added.
No, it's added, but I mean, where is the deficiency coming from years ago? What did people eat? Because they didn't have thyroid problems 50 years ago. It didn't exist. Well, that's where you got that's where I'd start. Do that. Next time I'm here, you can tell me. Do an internet search. Where did iodine deficiency come from? Good question. Couple more?
What was the one you mentioned for asthma?
Asthma is the liquid Essiac with cat's claw, phenomenal. With the cat's claw, it is the best upper respiratory thing there is. Yeah, I mean, you could take a break and have a few questions after. Want to do that? Take a break, or what do you want to do? Just end at 7:05, or end at 7, or end 5 minutes, or what do you want me to do? Okay, couple more questions. Yeah.
What about gout?
Yeah, gout's an interesting one. It's not, it's uric acid. There's something, the oil should be acting as a buffer and be very good against gout. The parent essential oils. Take a look at those books out there. I mean, supplements are great. I want to make this very clear, but I like people liking the science, so please look at the science. I don't want you to just believe in something I say. It's too important. You need to understand this for yourself.
So the FDA recommends that we eat all this whole grain.
Yeah.
And then they recommend that you eat like 35 grams of high fiber.
Yeah.
So are we supposed to?
Two things. Are whole grains better than white flour? Absolutely not. It's more BS. The glycemic thing is a bunch of nonsense. When you look at the curves, whole organic flour, a simple carb compared to a complex carb, 10 minutes goes to the same amount of sugar. So I tell people you get just as fat 10 minutes later. Wonderful job. Fiber, you don't need at all. That is absolutely insane. Fiber is cellulose. It is irritating. So fiber is giving women colon cancer. Stupidest thing. And this came out in 2000 and 1999, New England Journal of Medicine, The Lancet. Women eating the most fiber had the most colon cancer. Now it's back to eat fiber. They go round and round. It's insane. You don't need fiber. Don't worry about it at all. It's in the food. Don't take anything to get fiber. Absolute insanity.
I just want to say what I consider a success with the omegas.
Yeah.
My husband about 3 years ago had a stroke.
Yeah.
And I took him to the hospital. I didn't know till 4 hours later because I wasn't home. They said it was a brainstem stroke
Yes.
called a widowmaker.
Yes. You're dead.
And he was hospitalized only for 3 days. He'd been on the omegas for 10 years. When we got out of the hospital, he mowed the yard. Oh my God. And now, if you didn't know he had a stroke, you would not know that he had a stroke.
It's fair. I wonder why he got it to begin with, but that's superb. So the oil has pretty much saved him.
We had him on other medicine.
Of course.
A whole bunch of other stuff. They said, well, you shouldn't have had this stroke because all this medicine you're on. The statin went out the door. He said, I'm not doing that. He got hip pain. He threw it away. So, I
Good.
credit the omegas for it.
Good.
Thank you.
Excellent. My pleasure.
Brian, what book should we read?
There's two out there, 24-Hour Diet and PEO Solution. So if you care about weight loss, 24-Hour Diet. If you care about health, PEO Solution. The material is 90% overlapping, but it's a different focus. One is health, one is diet-based. So the flavor of the two are different, but the science is completely consistent, as it has to be. But they're both there. Take a look at them.
How many of the PEO capsules do you take?
I do about 6. I take about maybe 4,500 milligrams, so 4.5 grams, which is still very, very little. 1 teaspoon is 7 capsules of a 725 milligram oil. So a teaspoon a day gives you this kind of boom, a lot of bang for the buck. But that's because I'm pushing and pushing and pushing. Typically just 4 a day is enough. I mean, 1 capsule, 725 milligram for every 40-pound body weight is typically enough. It's called prophylactic, meaning you don't have cancer, you don't have a heart disease, you have nothing wrong with you. Maintenance is typically fine. You need more energy, you're going to the gym more, you need to work more, take an extra couple, either physical or mental, boom, just more.
For depression and
Phenomenal for depression. The oils, they make the endocrine system work fully functional. Excellent, yes. A lot of depressed people take these. Very hard to be depressed. Good question.
So what do you know about the hyperbaric machine?
Yeah, hyperbaric machines won't do anything compared to what these oils will do. The hyperbaric chamber. So these oils are the equivalent of hyperbaric oxygen treatment 24 hours a day. The hyperbaric is very marginal success rates. Marginal. There's nothing like what they try and lead you to believe. These oils are what does it. It's very hard to get the oxygen in there, but pressurizing it, it's a lot harder than they say.
This time of year, they keep pressing you to get flu.
Flu shot? I would never touch a flu shot. It gives you the flu. Actually, when they didn't have the flu shot available because they ran out once, they had less people dying when they didn't have the flu shots. And they never talked about it. They're both, you shouldn't get shingles with these oils. You shouldn't even get, and if you do get shingles, you take the oils, your episode will be half the time and way less pain. It's phenomenal. Yeah, good question. Now, these oils also kill viruses. That's how viruses are killed. It envelops them, and it gets killed. It really does.
Can you eat a little bit of honey each day?
Honey's a carb, but a little bit's not bad. I mean, teaspoon is nothing. Absolutely. Teaspoon of sugar is nothing.
You were saying that flaxseed oil is bad. Is that
Flaxseed oil by itself is bad because it's the wrong stuff. It's too much omega-3.
Even organic?
It doesn't matter. Yeah, it's the wrong stuff. It's just like fish oil. It's the wrong physiologic stuff.
There is some in the 369.
Oh, there's some in my formulations, but it's a certain ratio.
Okay.
You don't want too much. If you take straight flax oil, you're going to get an overdose of the parent omega-3. We need way more parent omega-6 than we do 3. That's the point, based on our physiology. That's the point.
What about COPD?
COPD, the liquid Essiac with the cat's claw, COPD, still lungs, and the oils. But that liquid Essiac is phenomenal with cat's claw. And you take double. 2 more questions, then we got to go.
Is it okay to take the omega-369 with food?
If you take the oils with food, because it has such an appetite-fulfilling effect, you may get real full. So you absolutely can. Doesn't wreck their efficiency in the least, but you may feel wicked full. So I typically take them on an empty stomach before I eat, and you eat less as a rule. So it has a very appetite, not suppressing, fulfilling. Last one. Okay, the oils will help you significantly. They should. And the liquid Essiac will too. I would take them both. Minerals are third. Half in the morning, half at night, because you recuperate at night. So take it right at bedtime. Half in the morning, half at night. Thank you for coming. Half of both, the oils and the Essiac. Both.